The 2026 FIFA World Cup kicked off on Wednesday in Mexico City, one of the biggest sporting events in human history. 48 teams, 104 matches, an estimated 6 billion viewers around the world. It was supposed to be the moment the United States proved it could still host the world. And a few days in, the world is watching, just not from inside the stadiums and not from inside the hotels. Let's start with the hotels, because that's where the gap between what was promised and what is actually happening becomes impossible to ignore. 80% of hotels across the 11 U.S. host cities are reporting bookings below forecast. And when I say below forecast, I don't mean slightly off. I mean structurally, significantly, visibly below. The American Hotel and Lodging Association surveyed over 200 properties across the country and found that the majority of them described the tournament as, quote, non-event. That phrase, non-event, is not casual language in the hospitality industry. It's a specific term reserved for situations where a mega event generates less business than a completely ordinary summer week. Not less than projected, less than nothing, less than baseline. Arlington, Texas, which hosts more World Cup matches than any other American city, playing its games at AT&T Stadium, publicly acknowledged slower than expected demand almost immediately after the tournament began. The president of the Arlington Convention and Visitors Bureau cited anti-American sentiment as a contributing factor in the shortfall. That is a remarkable thing for a civic tourism official to say out loud. It means the problem is not logistical, it is political. Hotels in Dallas and Philadelphia that raised their nightly rates by 300% in anticipation of a once-in-a-generation boom are now sitting on empty rooms and slashing prices below what they would have charged on a perfectly ordinary June weekend. That is not a minor revenue adjustment. That is a full reversal of a financial strategy that these businesses built their entire summer around. But here is where it gets even worse, because FIFA itself made the problem significantly harder to solve. In the weeks leading up to the tournament, FIFA quietly exercised opt-out clauses buried inside its hotel contracts and canceled thousands of room block reservations across multiple host cities, including Dallas, Philadelphia, and Arlington. What FIFA had done was lock up massive blocks of hotel inventory months in advance. That move created an artificial demand signal across the entire market. Hotels seeing those blocks reserved turned away other customers and raised their prices to match what they assumed would be peak demand. And then FIFA canceled. A FIFA spokesperson described this as, quote, adjusting room blocks in line with contractually agreed timelines. The hotels described it as a bait and switch. Up to 70% of rooms that FIFA had reserved in Boston, Dallas, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and Seattle were canceled, according to the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Local business owners who had built their entire summer revenue model around World Cup tourism are now staring at empty lobbies, canceled reservations, and a summer that is actively performing worse than if the tournament had never come to their city at all. And the empty hotels are not the only story. The fan experience on the ground is confirming what the booking data already suggested. The Council on Foreign Relations published 2 separate analyses this week, one focused on geopolitical tensions surrounding the tournament, one focused on the empty seats inside the stadiums, and both concluded the same thing. This tournament does not look like a celebration of global unity. It looks like a security operation that happens to have soccer playing in the background. International media covering the World Cup on the ground are reporting that the atmosphere around stadiums feels less like a sporting festival and more like a high-security government event. Streets closed, parking banned for blocks in every direction, entire perimeters locked down behind barriers and checkpoints, armed personnel visible at every single entrance. The fans who actually made it to the United States are navigating a border and immigration system that was quite clearly not designed for the most complex international sporting event ever staged in human history. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. 48 teams moving simultaneously across 3 countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Fans following their teams face a shifting maze of visa requirements, customs checkpoints, and immigration scrutiny that changes not just on which country you are entering, but on which one you are leaving and which passport you are carrying. The logistical burden placed on international travelers is unlike anything seen at any previous World Cup. The political dimension to all of this has not stayed in the background, it has arrived directly at the stadium gates. Major protests erupted outside SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles ahead of the opening matches involving the U.S. team. Demonstrators gathered to clash over American military involvement in the Middle East, over immigration enforcement policy, and over the broader question of whether a nation currently engaged in active military conflict should be hosting an event that FIFA itself has branded as a celebration of peace and unity. Amnesty International published a formal report describing the United States hosting environment as a human rights emergency, characterized by abusive immigration enforcement policies, severe restrictions on free assembly, and institutional discrimination against LGBTQ communities. The language is blunt and specific, and it did not appear from nowhere. Human Rights Watch had already been sounding the alarm for months before the tournament began in April. The organization released a 79-page reporter's guide documenting human rights conditions across all 3 host countries, with the U.S. section drawing the sharpest warnings. HRW noted that between January and March of last year, ICE arrested at least 167,000 people in and around the 11 American host cities. 167,000 arrests in the neighborhoods where the World Cup tourists are now arriving with their scarves and their flags. HRW also documented the case of Mario Guevara, an Emmy Award-winning journalist who was arrested in Atlanta, a World Cup host city, while filming a political protest, then transferred to ICE custody and deported to El Salvador. In March of this year, journalist Stephanie Rodriguez, who had been covering immigration raids, was reportedly arrested without officers presenting a warrant. These are not abstract human rights concerns. They are documented incidents that happened in the specific cities now hosting global football. The Trump administration's immigration policies have cast a long shadow over the entire tournament. Back in January, the administration suspended immigrant visa processing for citizens of 75 countries, a move that, even though it technically applied to immigrant visas rather than tourist visas, sent a clear signal to the international community. Nearly 17,000 ticket holders reportedly canceled their travel plans in direct response. A diplomat publicly canceled his World Cup tickets in protest, stating that the United States was not safe for international visitors under the current enforcement climate. This is where the empty seats start to make complete sense as a data point, not an anomaly. FIFA officially reported attendance at the Guadalajara Stadium for one early group stage match as 44,985, just under 700 seats short of the venue's listed capacity of 45,664. But photos circulating from inside the stadium told a different story, visible stretches of empty seating in multiple sections. The gap between official attendance figures and the visible reality in the stands has become one of the recurring controversies of the early tournament, with fans, journalists, and social media users raising questions about how FIFA counts and reports attendance numbers. Resale ticket prices, which typically rise dramatically as a major tournament approaches and early matches sell out, were actually falling through May. FIFA then released last-minute batches of additional inventory in an apparent attempt to mask the extent of unsold supply. According to a Financial Times investigation, resellers across secondary platforms were struggling to move inventory. For lower-demand group stage fixtures, secondary market tickets were dropping to as low as $200 in some cases, a number that reflects not just softening demand, but a collapse in the speculative premium that typically inflates World Cup ticket markets in the weeks before kickoff. For context, resale prices back in the spring were reaching extraordinary highs. Tickets for the opening match on June 11th at Mexico City's Estadio Aztec were listed on some platforms for $77,000. Viagogo was offering the opening match at above $56,000 per ticket for high-end inventory. By June, the secondary market for many U.S.-hosted group games had cratered to a fraction of those projections. The numbers behind the economic promise of this tournament are starting to look increasingly fragile. FIFA originally projected 1.24 million international visitors to the United States and a total economic impact of $30 billion across all three host nations. That figure has been the marketing foundation of the entire U.S. hosting operation since the bid was awarded. But Deutsche Bank issued a research note in June of this year, noting that even if FIFA's full projection of 1.2 million international fans arrived in North America, the boost to the U.S. economy would amount to approximately 0.05% of GDP, a temporary, marginal, and largely invisible blip in the context of a $28 trillion economy. Oxford Economics put the projected direct economic impact for U.S. host cities specifically at figures far below FIFA's headline number. Their analysis found that gains in GDP and employment would be, quote, marginal and short-lived, concentrated almost entirely in leisure and hospitality, and largely offset by the displacement of normal summer tourism that the tournament's logistics and security restrictions have driven away. In other words, the fans who would have come to these cities for a normal summer vacation did not come because of the disruption. The World Cup fans who were supposed to replace them and then some did not arrive in the volumes projected. The net result is potentially negative for some host cities. The Council on Foreign Relations noted in its analysis that international tourism to the United States had already fallen 6.3% in the prior year, driven by visa restrictions and the atmosphere of aggressive immigration enforcement. The very demographic that was supposed to fill the stands, fans from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from Asia, represents precisely the international traveler most sensitive to the signals the U.S. government has been sending. There's one match in particular that is already generating significant diplomatic friction and has yet to even be played. The group stage fixture between Egypt and Iran, scheduled for June 26th in Seattle, has become a focal point for the LGBTQ dimension of the human rights debate. Both Egypt and Iran criminalize homosexuality under their national laws. Both football associations have filed formal protests with FIFA regarding Seattle's position as host of this match. Though the nature of those protests has not been fully detailed publicly, Seattle's local organizing committee has stated that it is proceeding as planned. What happens on and around June 26th in Seattle will be watched closely by advocates, diplomats, and international media. And then there is the head coach situation, which is a story that deserves more attention than it has received. Mauricio Pochettino, the Argentine manager who has been leading the United States men's national team through World Cup qualification and into this tournament, reportedly reached a pre-agreement with AC Milan before a single ball was kicked. According to reporting from La Gazzetta dello Sport, confirmed by ESPN and multiple other outlets, Milan agreed in principle to a deal worth $5 million per season, a contract set to begin in August. Pochettino's deal with U.S. Soccer runs only through the end of the team's World Cup campaign, and with that campaign now underway, he is simultaneously managing the host nation's squad while his representatives finalize an exit to Italian club football. Pochettino publicly stated that he remains 100% committed to the U.S. MNT. He has not denied that talks with Milan took place. He has said he would be open to staying with U.S. Soccer beyond the tournament if invited. But the structure of the situation is what it is. The coach of the host nation is playing out the final weeks of his contract while a Serie A club waits on the other side. The on-field results, to be fair, have not reflected the chaos surrounding the team. The United States opened their World Cup with a 4-1 victory over Paraguay in Los Angeles. Folarin Balogun scored twice. Christian Pulisic was outstanding, controlling the game against a backline that had no answer for his pace and movement. The 7th-minute goal set the tone early, and the final scoreline was convincing. That result is genuinely good. The players on that pitch have spent their entire careers working toward this moment, and they earned the victory. But the context surrounding that win is almost surreal when you step back and look at it whole. The United States team beat Paraguay by 3 goals inside a stadium surrounded by political protesters. 80% of the host city's hotels were emptier than they would have been on a normal summer weekend. Their own coach was days away from completing a move to Italian club football. The economic boom the city had been promised had not arrived. That is not what home advantage looks like. That is a group of athletes performing at the highest level in spite of the structural dysfunction surrounding them, not because of any organizational support beneath their feet. The U.S. team subsequently defeated Australia 2-1 in Colorado, with Jordan Boss opening the scoring in the 19th minute before the Americans came back to win. 2 wins from 2 matches puts the United States in a strong position in their group. The football is happening, the results are coming, the players are delivering, but the story playing out in the hotels, at the borders, in the political protests, in the resale market, and in the diplomatic protests over upcoming fixtures is running on a completely separate track, and it is the louder story of this tournament so far. The predictions made in earlier coverage, empty hotels, economic underperformance, immigration barriers suppressing international attendance, political tensions materializing at stadium perimeters, are not predictions anymore. They are things that are now visible on camera, reported by international media, confirmed by data from the hotel industry, and documented by human rights organizations. The economic impact of the 2026 World Cup in the United States is now widely projected to come in at less than half of FIFA's original $30 billion headline figure. International attendance will likely fall at least 20% below the 1.24 million forecast. The hotel industry in multiple host cities is on track to record a net loss compared to what a normal summer would have generated. Oxford Economics described gains as marginal. Deutsche Bank said the GDP impact would be nearly invisible in macroeconomic terms. FIFA, for its part, has continued to project official optimism. FIFA President Gianni Infantino, who was present at early matches, including the Guadalajara fixture, where empty seats generated renewed scrutiny, has described the tournament as a success in progress. FIFA's official communications have emphasized television viewership numbers, global audience projections, and the historic scale of the expanded 48-team format. The gap between the organization's public messaging and the ground-level reality being reported from inside the host cities is substantial and growing. The geopolitical dimension of this tournament extends beyond U.S. borders as well. The 3-country hosting arrangement, United States, Canada, and Mexico, was itself a political statement, an attempt to use the World Cup as a demonstration of North American partnership. But the relationship between the 3 countries has been complicated in the period since the bid was awarded. Trade tensions, tariff disputes, and shifting diplomatic dynamics between Washington and both Ottawa and Mexico City have created friction in the background of what was supposed to be a seamless, tri-national celebration of the beautiful game. Fans crossing between host nations face a logistical puzzle that has no precedent in World Cup history. A supporter following their team from a group stage game in Mexico through a round of 16 match in a U.S. city and potentially into a quarterfinal in Canada faces 3 separate immigration processes, 3 different security environments, and 3 different sets of rules around what they can carry, wear, and say at a match. For fans from countries with complex relationships with any of the 3 host nations' immigration authorities, the practical barriers are not trivial. The Pride match situation reflects a broader tension that FIFA has never successfully resolved in the history of major tournament hosting. The organization's human rights commitments, made during the bid process, sit in structural tension with the reality of which countries qualify for and participate in the tournament. Egypt and Iran are both in the group stage. Both countries criminalize same-sex relations. Their match is scheduled in Seattle, a city with one of the most visible and politically active LGBTQI communities in the United States. The organizing committee says it is proceeding. The FAs have filed protests. What those protests mean in practice, whether they affect player conduct, team statements, or match day protocols, remains to be clarified publicly before June 26th. The broader question this tournament is raising, a question that will shape the conversation around future World Cups in authoritarian, adjacent, or politically polarized host environments, is whether FIFA's model of treating a mega event as a geopolitically neutral sporting occasion is still viable in an era when politics arrives at the stadium gate, whether invited or not. The tournament has barely started. 48 teams still have most of their matches ahead of them. The knockout rounds have not begun. The economic data will keep accumulating. The protests will continue. The diplomatic frictions will not resolve themselves before the final whistle in July. What is already clear after less than a week of play is that the 2026 FIFA World Cup is not the event that was promised. Not for the American economy, not for international fans trying to navigate the US border, not for the hospitality industry in 11 host cities, and not for the vision of a unified, welcoming, globally open tournament that FIFA sold to the world when this bid was approved. The gap between what was promised and what is being delivered is now on camera, documented, and visible to every one of those 6 billion viewers watching at